Secret of the Mimic is a game that I want to love so badly, and God knows I've tried. This game has been the bane of my existence for the last 11 months. I originally planned to make some sort of retrospective of this game, as I haven't played it since it released last year, and I still want to make that video, but after getting past the Nurse Dolly section again, I've just realised that there's so much that I actually want to say about this game that I need to dedicate 2 videos to it rather than 1. In the last 48 hours, I have felt every emotion under the spectrum because of this game. The best way to describe it is that it's simply a love-hate relationship. Because sometimes I'll be having the time of my life, enjoying every second and getting really immersed in the vibe this game has created. Then about 4 seconds later, the game puts me in a chase sequence and I die 5 times because the game decided that I was having too much fun. It's hard to put how I feel about this game into words. I have so much good to say about it, but equally as much bad, and that upsets me greatly. So for the good of my own sanity, I'm putting it all here for your viewing pleasure. But really quickly, I would just like to take a minute to talk about my thoughts whenever I was going through this game originally. And to do that, I have to talk about which is never a good way to start a sentence. Much like Secret of the Mimic, I played Security Breach when it first released as well. And out of fear of sugarcoating anything, I'm just going to come right out and say it. This game can go die on a hill. It was an insult to the money I spent on it, and if I could have gotten a refund, I would have. The game was a buggy mess with 0 stakes, 0 genuinely tense moments, and relied on nostalgia to carry its sales. So going into Secret of the Mimic, I was already skeptical. In fact, I didn't even buy the game. My girlfriend insisted that I play it because she didn't want to wait on Markiplier uploading his playthrough, so she gifted it to me on Steam, and I played it for her. And to my shock, I was pleasantly surprised by the opening to this game. The voice acting didn't feel forced, Arnold came off as a sympathetic protagonist from the get-go, and I particularly enjoyed the Fazbear Entertainment representative who is just a perfect asshole. What I'm saying is, this game started with momentum, and it carried that momentum for quite a while. I thought that the build-up to the Mimic's first appearance was well done, and when he first appeared properly, it was a well thought out scene with obvious ways to lure him away, which was a nice seamless way of teaching players how to avoid him going forward. My first issue didn't occur till I got back to this showroom. When I first attempted to reset the show, my game crashed immediately, and proceeded to do it 3 more times until eventually it let me through. And in that moment, I was very quickly reminded that this is a Steel Wool era FNAF game and that bugs and glitches are just par for the course. Hell, even on my current playthrough nearly a year later, the game has crashed 3 times so far. This game released 11 months ago. How is this not fixed yet? There are just a few things I want to get into here before continuing. First, I want to talk about the Mimic himself. And to make it long story short, he blows. A big problem I had with Security Breach is that avoiding the animatronics wasn't engaging and on most occasions was just outright frustrating. Secret of the Mimic does not fix this problem for me. The Mimic himself isn't very threatening most of the time, because he just looks a bit silly in most of the suits. And that'd be fine if the game wasn't relying on me being terrified to keep me engaged. So because I'm not scared, encountering the Mimic becomes an absolute slogfest where I could be waiting upwards of 2 to 3 minutes for him to move so I can progress. Like bro, stop aura farming and get out of my way. A huge area where I had this problem in my first playthrough was this area where you have to find the pieces of a spring-locked suit to take a lift to the next section. The problem here is that the pieces are all scattered through a huge warehouse right outside this room, and you have to collect 5 of them in total. This section took me 30 minutes to beat because I had to wait on the Mimic moving from where I needed to be, and at any time, if I made any sort of noise, he would directly beeline to me and stand there for at least a minute before I could do anything else. Now this is tense the first 3 or 4 times it happens, but after doing this for 30 minutes straight, forgive me if I lost any fear and just got bored. That's not to mention that on several occasions, the Mimic would just teleport somewhere else to inconvenience me more, which just makes it even more frustrating. The reason I'm honing in on this section so much is because it's the first instance I can remember where I genuinely stopped enjoying the game. And if it hadn't been for my girlfriend asking me to keep playing, I probably would have just uninstalled it then and there. So imagine my utter surprise and shock when I replayed this section yesterday and the Mimic didn't even spawn. In fact, a big issue I'm having on this playthrough of the game is that the Mimic isn't spawning in a lot of the rooms he used to. I'm not sure if this is some sort of update that they did to the game or something, but he just doesn't appear. Another room that this happened in was the room where you have to find the guide to fix this elevator. I distinctively remember him spawning here, and this time around, he just didn't. And you know what? My enjoyment of this game has actually increased because of this. It makes me more engaged when he does spawn. It means that these sections with longer objectives are more bearable, and it means that the pace of this game doesn't grind to an agonizing halt every 10 minutes. When this game just gives you time to breathe and take in the absolutely stunning visuals that they've created, it completely changes the experience. Now again, there's a lot that I want to say about this game. This video is more of a rant than anything while I work on the real video that I want to make. So I promise that while a lot of what I'm saying here is negative, I do have a lot of positive to say about it too. But you know, just while we're on the negative, these chase sequences make me want to headbutt a wall. Well no, that's an exaggeration. This chase sequence makes me want to headbutt a wall. This big bastard infuriates me in ways that your mind cannot comprehend, and that makes it worse because this had the opportunity to be a big highlight of this game. These are some of the most annoyingly stupid game design choices that I have ever seen. Let me explain why. Take this part for example. The clear implication is that you're meant to keep heading forward, but suddenly your path is blocked. That's okay, it adds tension. Now you only have a few seconds to, oh never mind, you didn't preemptively know where to go so now you just die. Cool. So now the chase sequence is ruined because all of that tension only works on a first attempt. This is a similar issue that people have pointed out about the Poppy Playtime games, namely Markiplier. When you die in a chase sequence, that fear and dread you felt on a first attempt is gone. When a chase sequence becomes trial and error, the terror goes out the window and this really intense scene suddenly becomes a running simulator. And this chase sequence has killed me in some of the most bullshit ways. For example, this section where you're crawling and he's placing debris in your way. Yeah, I had an attempt where he placed them all in a straight line, making me walk all the way around, then his hand came down on top of me and killed me with literally no way to avoid it because I couldn't react fast enough to move without getting stuck on a wall. Which really does add to the biggest issue that this game has. Its pacing is all over the place. The game doesn't quite know if it wants to be a fast-paced action horror game or a slow-paced psychological horror game. Because you can't have both, and it makes the game just feel messy. As much as I criticise games like Security Breach and Sister Location, at least they knew what they wanted to be. It feels like Stillwool just wanted to appeal to as many people in the fandom as they possibly could, and it ended up just not working for me whatsoever. And while I could sit here and criticise these aspects of the game for hours, they aren't problems that could just be simply hotfixed out of the game. They are fundamental problems that have been built into the game from the beginning. So trying to remove them now would just change the game entirely. The bugs and crashes, however, they are still prevalent to this day, and those issues can be fixed. But rather than fixing what actually needs to be fixed, Stillwool has then decided that they would rather focus on making a VR port of the game. Which is fine, don't get me wrong, I see the vision here. And this game will definitely be a lot more effective horror-wise in VR. But when the core experience isn't even working properly, why are we moving on to making a VR port? I know this is a whole lot of yap, but it just doesn't look great from my point of view. I literally felt the need to make this video on a whim before continuing my playthrough, just to get all these things off my chest before getting stuck into the real video that I want to make, which I assure you is a lot more positive than this one. Because while I believe that a lot has went wrong with this game's development, so much went right as well. But I'm not going to tell you what that is because that kind of ruins a whole section of my next video, so I'll leave you with this. This game is a complicated experience. And while I find it to be a very unenjoyable game in some sections, I would still recommend that you play it for yourself if you haven't already. This game is aggravating to me because it counts on me being terrified during every encounter with the Mimic without doing any of the heavy lifting to make the Mimic terrifying. Aside from random jump scares, I suppose. But if you were scared of the Mimic, I guarantee that you would have a much more positive experience than I did in these slower, more horror-oriented sections. So TLDR, I don't hate this game, I just loathe certain sections with a fiery passion. So I apologise for the rant. The next video will be a lot more positive than this one, I promise. But anyways, I'll see you then. Please subscribe and like, or my house will burn down.